going to talk about the NgRx SignalStore, but first let me show you one little interesting, funny story. So this was a viral tweet probably half a year ago or so, where a man boarded a flight and said to a complete stranger who looked exactly like that, right? This is pretty funny. I saw that too. I found it funny. And then people was like, Alex, is that you? Is that you? It's like, no. Those are not me, right? Those are not me. You know, that is me. Hey. That is me. So, yeah, that was a funny one. No, we're not triplets or something. All right, but who am I? Who am I? So I'm Alex Okrushko. I'm a front-end engineering manager at the company called Layer Zero. It's in the blockchain space. I'm a part of the NgRx team for a while and Google developer expert in Angular. Recently, I also released 2 front-end master courses on intermediate and advanced Angular. The first, the introductory course, was by Mark Thompson. So if you want to see the intermediate and advanced, I'll at the end share the QR code. I hope you really like it. I put a lot of effort into that. So you can check that out. All right, so what we're going to learn today, or at least cover. First thing, I want you to introduce the notion of mental model, right? And why is it important to have one around things? This is how, in general, I operate and how I create code or work on the architecture. Then we're going to see a little difference between server versus client-side state management, just to unpack some of the concepts there. You can all hear me all right at the back, right? Okay. Then another interesting concept of indirection. You know, we're going to build some mental models around this, so we'll build the mental model around indirection as well. Then we'll start digging deeper in the client-side state management, and we'll see the difference between command versus event-driven state management. Then finally, I'm going to introduce the SignalStore and extensibility. Who's using here NgRx already? Okay, quite a lot. Okay, most of you actually. Who's using component SignalStore? All right, so half of you. That's pretty good. And actually, the numbers do show. NgRx SignalStore is just behind its grandfather, the global store. It's very, very popular. It's reaching, I think, 500,000 downloads per week. Very popular, and rightfully so. So for some of you, it will be a revision. For some of you, it will be introduction. But then we're going to talk about extensibility of it, which is, again, a really cool thing. Rainer is nodding. Yes, he's 100% agrees with me as well. And I'm going to touch a little bit on the events plugin in general as well. All right, so in the world of software development, we typically run into 2 different types of code bases. On your left, right, is a labyrinth. It's a complete, complex, tangled system where any change can, break a lot of other things. Onboarding new developers is very hard, and it's very hard to deal with. And on your right is a different kind. It's like almost well-ordered, well-organized city where, it's intuitive, it has clean architecture, components work predictably, and again, it feels naturally and easy to understand. Reality is it's never this clean, of course, right? Anybody has this clean? No, right? Yeah. Reality is just a little bit of mix always, but this is what we ideally try to strive for. But the difference between these two is not even, the coding standards or the number of comments you leave in the code. It is more about the clarity of thought that you put into the architecture itself. And the secret to building like large, scalable, and maintainable applications, again, it's not even the specific framework or a library. It's actually borrowed from the cognitive science. The concept is called mental model. So the mental model is a map in our mind that explains how things work, right? And I do encourage you always creating one. And these type of models we sometimes intuitively build, right? Like how a shopping cart works, right? We've seen it once, we know all the other sides, how they would operate, or how other parts of the architecture are structured as well. And the idea of this shared mental model describing how our system architecture and processes are combined, right, becomes basically a common language within the team. If you have this shared model, your team can communicate easier, right, and you understand what's underlying for this architecture. So as author James Clear stated, we do not rise to the levels of our goals, but we fall to the level of our systems. So it's not the what we strive for, but what we actually implement, right? So a well-defined mental model is basically a foundational system upon the good software could be built. And again, it doesn't matter if you're in Angular or React or anywhere, right? Having this shared understanding of excellence, sometimes people say, or good shared mental models around how you build your software. And it can evolve as well, right? So this leads to the primary job of as our software architects, a software developer for us, is to basically achieve the state of architectural harmony. The choices of what we design patterns that we do, the paradigms that we use, and overall architectural structures should be driven around the principle of alignment within the team. And one core piece of alignment that you have to have within the team is state management. It becomes, do you have it, do you not have it, right? It becomes a critical part of any front-end application, or any application in general. So the way the application manages its state, right, it becomes one of the most fundamental and impactful architectural decisions. And yes, with AI, you can do things much faster. You can get further along without thinking about it. But again, at the end of the day, if you put the effort, even teaching your AI some of the mental models, then you'll be producing much more predictable code for your application. All right, I had to do AI. Of course, everybody's doing AI, so here you go. I'm actually so surprised not a lot of AI talks except for Yunus there. All right, so let's start breaking things apart. Let's start forming some of the mental models as well. One of them is server versus client-side state management. Like we all know, the server has the source of truth for any persistent state, right? That's where it lives. That's what we query. That's the snapshots of data we get out of it, right? That's generally the truth. There's no way around it. So on the server side, we can introduce something called server cache, where we can fetch data from specific API, right? We can provide the network request status for that API call. We can do automatic caching and even cache busting and validation. We can do refetching what we want, right? So this was kind of server state and server cache provides for us. One of the biggest example of it is HTTP resource, right? So HTTP resource is the server state. It talks to one specific API, right? And you can refetch it, requery it. When the user ID in this case changes, right, you'll get the new response for it. And it's really good and to use it, right? And very easy, very ergonomic. If it like has value, if you can read the value, if there's error, if it's loading, all that things are working pretty well. And this way we basically get a snapshot of server state and we synchronize it to the front-end application through this HTTP resource. So that's a good example there. Now, let's take a look at what indirection is. What does it mean? Here, there's no indirection, right? User is directly tied to the HTTP resource. whenever that value changes, our user gets updated, right? So we're directly linking them. Indirection is a different kind of pattern, and again, very useful as well. Indirection allows us to keep the source of truth for the data somewhere, and then when we need to change that or affect that, we'll call something else. Let's look at the example. For example, we have this customer service. Again, we'll inject the HTTP client, and we have customers as a signal, right? So our customers becomes this reactive source of data. Now, we would, for example, add methods to get all customers or update a single customer, right? And what happens here, we'll do some API call, for example, and we'll update the set of our customers, for example. Either one when we add one or all of them when we set there, right? So here, when we want to affect this state change, we call something else, but yet we read the data from the customer's signal. For example, here, kind of getting it all together, right? We read the data from the customers. It's not a HTTP resource, right? But then when we affect changes, we call to either get all or like create. See, it becomes indirectly. We read it one way and we affect it the other way. There's a real good use cases for this. For example, anywhere where you need just to read the data, you can just call customer service.customers, and you do not care who is affecting the changes. It could be this page, it could be another page. All it cares is like, hey, I have this reactive source of data, and when it changes, it will let me know. That's the beauty of it. And this is a very powerful technique NgRx team has been using for a while, right? We have even the older global store, indirection was heavily used. In fact, we would have two levels of indirection. The second one was abstraction of actions, right? If you're not familiar with it, don't worry about it. But what I wanted to show you is this pattern is very beneficial and very useful. Now, let's talk about a little bit more of a client state management, what type of state management we can have. We can have a command-driven or command-based, and we can have event-based. Command-based is, the principle of it is to tell something to do something. For example, customer service, get all, give me all customers. You explicitly tell what to do, right? You read data through indirection, but you tell it specifically, hey, do this thing. And again, example is just injectable service, component store, signal store, any of those would kind of work in the command-based approach. The second approach is event-based approach. It takes, again, it to the next level. We no longer tell it what to do specifically. We're saying something happened, and whoever's listening, you go figure out what needs to be done. But from the perspective of component or particular part of the system, it says, hey, something happened. So it's event-based approach. For example, hey, my page got opened, and you figure out what needs to be done. Customers need to fetch, do products need to fetch, like whatever, right? From the component's perspective, it's like, hey, this happened, and I'll be reading some data somewhere else. Again, biggest examples are NgRx global store, right? NgRx store. Again, let's just break it down one more time in some charting. So in the command, we'll have a component. It'll tell our service or store, hey, do something. Do something, and it'll just read the data back, right? So using indirection, do something, read the data back. If there's another service it needs to talk to, it'll let it know as well, hey, you do something as well. And of course, you'll read the data back. Very powerful, very simple as well. It's fairly straightforward approach. Event-based, on the other hand, does things differently. It says, hey, something happened, and it sends it to the event bus, right? Hey, all the things that are happening within the app, they're being let know to this event bus. Something happened. And then whoever cares about what happened starts listening for these. for example, some reducer. In fact, again, don't be scared about those words. But they'll be basically notified like, hey, something happened. They will listen for this. Reducers will update their internal state. Effects will do something else, side effects, API calls, whatever. And then the component would read the data from it. If there is another thing to do, right, it could be a reducer B and effect B. They are also notified from exactly the same event. And then component can read from there as well. Or, even more, component can combine those reads into one read and read only a certain thing, right? So those are two different techniques. I'm not going to say that one is better than the other, because if something I've learned in 20-something years of developing software, there's no such thing as this is the right thing to do things. It always depends. It depends on many things. Depends on the type of architecture, the type of the app you're running. Depends on the architecture you're trying to set up. You can have both of these approaches, right? You can have the command base for a smaller part. You can have event base for a more complex part of the app. So there's a lot of depends. But I wanted to inform you about some of the typical patterns and some of the mental models you can start creating around the state and movement of state within your app. So we have server cache, right, directly tying to a specific API. And again, these are good valid use cases for this, right? You can keep using that and be fine, right? Especially if whatever your API is handcrafted for specific pages that you have, right? You'll basically get this data in one shot. That's fine. A lot of apps that I have to work with usually is I need to have a few APIs and combine data for one page and then a few responses for another page. You know, that's typical, the very functional applications that I work with. And those could be done command-based or event-based. Luckily, we have a solution for pretty much any architecture needs now within the introduction of NgRx SignalStore. And NgRx SignalStore is our third state management library within the NgRx team. Many of you heard of the global store. Some of you probably are like have some burns and scared about it. All right, it is a beast, right? It was solving very particular complex problems. I found it in this NgRx store in its, I'd say, infancy, but it was heavily needed for a very complex app that I was working at. It was a Firebase console at Google. And it was definitely solving a lot of problems that we had with coordination of state. So I jumped on it and later became part of the team. But it's very, very powerful today that it can solve even the smaller problems that you can encapsulate. Right? It can help you that way too. So you don't have to have only like specifically large, complex problems. All right, let me walk you through some of the simplest example just to give you an idea of an API of this. Say we're working with some to-do state or something like that. We'll have interface of to-do. It has ID, text, and completed flag. And our overall state would be just basically a collection of those to-dos. So what SignalStore is basically a function. This function takes a number of what we call features and then eventually will create and combine you a single injectable class. But it's almost acting like a sugar, at the same time organizing, encapsulating, and basically being very helpful for state management in general. All right, so let's see what we can start with. One of the first helpers is with state. We're saying, hey, this is the state that you're responsible for. In this case, it'll be to-dos. And we say initially it's just an empty array. Right, so this is the state you work with. Now, anywhere in application, that's the only place where you go for state for to-dos, right? This will be a source of truth. Now, Second thing we want to add to it is derived state, right? Because do's is the core state, right? That's what we have. Derived state is we take that state and we derive something from it. For example, in this case, is the completed to-dos are the to-dos that are marked completed, right? So we can basically create a computed signal, right? And basically it'll be to-do, filter, and on completeness. Now my store I can also access dot completed to-dos, and it will always give me this derived state. I don't have to do anything. Now, typically, you still have to act on the state one way or another, change it. For that, we have with methods helper. And with methods, you can say, hey, I have this method to add a to-do. And what does it do? Well, in this case, it will patch the state. It will update our to-dos, spread the previous ones, add the new one. That's how you'll update to-do. Obviously, in the real application, it will be most likely some network call, fetch, update, and then all these things. But again, we'll just do this for simplicity. So with methods is a way to act on, modify the core state. Now you might notice that the beauty of this thing, we're now encapsulating all of this together, right? We basically have one store to work on this state, to have a core state, to have a computed from them, right? Your derived parts, and how you operate. And you encapsulate it. Nothing else can affect this state from anywhere else. It's easier to see what can affect this, right? And you can think of it as almost like a sugar if you just created a class by itself, had some properties, some methods. This is just a nicer way to do that, and more type-safe way. One other thing I want to show you is it also has access to hooks. For example, not those hooks, but the Angular lifecycle hooks. This is for on init, on destroy. You can do certain things there as well. For example, on init, you might already want to proactively fetch some data or do something. So it has access to those as well. So together, this completes the basic building blocks of a SignalStore. And it might look intimidating at first, right? It might be a syntax that take a little while to get used to, but it's very ergonomic and encapsulates exactly how you can operate on this state. How can we use this one? Okay, let's see our to-do component, for example. So in this case, I'll provide it in the list of providers. That means that the life cycle of this store is tied to this component specifically. You can have the SignalStore also provided in root. If you want to, then you don't need to have a provider. Then it becomes your singleton around the entire app. And again, I've seen many of your use cases to do it this way. This way it becomes like a shared state through entire application. So that's a completely valid use case. But in this case, because I didn't provide it in root, I need to provide it for this component. And it ties the lifecycle for this component. All right? Now, all I need to do is just inject it here. And I can use it almost like a view model, if you're familiar with this concept. See, my class, my component class has no code whatsoever. I'm basically accessing, hey, when I add a to-do, I'll just call that function. You see that method that we added? I can just invoke it and pass the data to it. I can read all of my to-dos. It's basically a signal, right? And it's reactive signal. So whenever it changes, I mean, that's the definition of a signal. It will update the state. Or I can use a derived or computed, right, values from it as well. In this case, completed to-dos is also part of the interface. So one of the cool things about these basic building blocks, all of them returning the same type. They're basically returning a SignalStore feature, right? All our building blocks. And in fact, the entire SignalStore is nothing more than a collection of these basic building blocks. It takes all of them in, right, and then returns an injectable class. Here you go. And you can really use this to your advantage because those basic building blocks are pre-built by us, by NgRx team. But this allows to very much big extensibility of the store. You can build your own custom ones. For that, you can use a function called SignalStore feature, which basically allows you to organize and subgroup your own little interactions and make it part of the bigger SignalStore. All it does, again, it goes over those features, reduces them, calls them one to another, and returns it back. All right, there you go. So I'll show you one simple, very, very simple example. For example, loading state, just to give you an idea of how you can create your custom extensions like that. Any API request typically has a state. It could be a request state, right? It could be idle, pending, fulfilled, or it can result in an error, right? And if you keep doing this throughout your application, again, almost like a resource type of stuff, right? But you can encapsulate it and say, hey, this is my request status state, right? So it'll be one of those. It cannot be in many of them at the same time. Let's create a custom feature for this. So we'll call this custom feature with request status. And to build this custom feature, we'll use this helper SignalStore feature, right? And then we can provide our other building blocks as part of it. For example, our initial state would be idle. And then we'll have a computed values. For example, again, this is a very simple example, so you understand. We can say, hey, if it is pending, then request status is pending. If it's fulfilled, then request status fulfilled. Or it can give me an error, right? I can extract the error. I'll look at this object and extract the actual string, right? So I basically have a state and computed. And now I encapsulated this and as a single feature. Now the cool part of this request status, here it is. I can now use it at any SignalStore I want, right? Because usually you would have multiple SignalStore. You can have some global ones. You can have some attached to different components. But I can use it anywhere now. How would I use it? Simple. Just add this custom feature there. And that's the beauty of basically adhering to that interface. And just by doing this, all of a sudden my store also gets a request status as a state, and also all those computed that we added, right? The pending, the fulfilled, the error, they're all there now, automatically added to the SignalStore. And for example, I'll add other methods like load all, right? And what I would do, I would patch state first, set it to pending. Set pending is just pure function that converts, sets the request status to pending. I'll get my result back with a wait, and then I'll patch the state to set fulfilled. That's it. Now I can, in my component, listen for the basically loading state as well and be fully aware. Almost like HTTP resource does it for us, right? So this extensibility is super powerful. And even within the NgRx team, we provided a lot of already our own custom accessibility things. For example, like entity management. Anybody familiar with entities? Good, good, good. If you're not using them, you should be. It's really, really powerful way to interact with collections. Typically, we store collections as arrays. And when you need to find one, modify one, it's like you're looping through array all the time. With entities, it's like super powerful. It's always, you can always have access it immediately, basically all of one access. You can modify immediately. You can get the full list. You can do whatever you want. Super powerful thing. But again, another custom feature. One more custom feature that I'm going to talk about today is the events plugin. Again, it's just another custom feature that just was built by NgRx team directly. And again, you're not limited by what NgRx team is only building, because you can create your own custom features as I just demonstrated. All right, so let me talk about the events plugin. Events plugin is for those cases where command-based approach is just not good enough, you need something a little bit more powerful, like event-based mechanisms. One more call out, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go over and run into your application and refactor and put all the events back in. SignalStore works with command-based just fine. This is for those use cases where you can benefit from this event architecture. So how would you do that if you need that? First, you can create some event groups. For example, we have the event group of user pages, things like opened or page got refreshed. And then I'll have some API events, for example, like loaded success, loaded failure. For those of you who used to use global store, these might look familiar because they're very close. It's also event-based system. All right, and then how you integrate them? You would add with reducers. Those would be changing your state. All right, so we'll have like a bunch of like on functions, almost like switch cases. On some of this event with send pending, on loaded success, we'll use the entities plugin here as well, and we'll set the payload. And of course, if it's failed, we say, hey, whatever, failed. And then the other beautiful thing here is the event handlers. This is, for those who've been using, it's with effects in the global store. That's what it is. And this is where you can do all the async things here. For example, you can load users, and here we'll plug in some of the RxJS things. In this case, we're using the exhaust map. The beauty of having RxJS here, it gives you control of those race conditions, where you can really specify how you want to handle the next event when the previous one was already in flight. 4 operators, right? Remember? Should everybody remember them? Exhaust map, merge map, switch map, concap map, right? I'm not going to talk about those, but definitely need to know those. And then I can explicitly handle them. All right, and that basically ties it together with the event plugin. How we can dispatch these events. For that, we'll inject the dispatcher, and we can dispatch events such as like page opened or page refreshed, for example, right? And those will send, and then they will trigger all the events in the SignalStore, and they will all do the logic, and then you can just read the data in the component. So there's many more examples. Again, I just want to share one that I've found. Romain, who's going to be also doing the talk today. Some time ago, he worked on this server cache with SignalStore, this NgQuery, and built his own extensions into this. He has some ideas how he wanted to implement server state and server cache, which is great because what SignalStore provides you is unlimited extensibility. You can create your own things. You can publish them if you want. You can keep them within your teams if you want. Those work both ways. All right, so SignalStore, client command, client events, and the server cache, all possible within this package. I know I'm closer to my time, but I want to bring up one more interesting point. So NG Poland, last year, end of the year, Q&A with Angular team there. And one interesting question I was in particular, I'm going to zoom it in a little bit. Is Angular team planning to integrate its own state management solution to the framework, right? Because they worked on all kinds of things, forms, this, that, SSR. And the answer was no, use NgRx SignalStore. And then when I tweeted that, Alex Ricobal also was like, hey, love the power of community. I don't think I can get a bigger endorsement other than that. So, and again, in general, in my Angular applications, I try to keep as minimal dependencies as possible. Especially we see what's happening with the last few weeks in the NPM world, right? It's a complete disaster, right? Packages are getting poisoned right, left, and center. But I would keep Angular ones, and I'll also have the NgRx for the state management. Quick summary, mental model, very important. Understanding shared within the team. In fact, we're using like almost mental model MD, so Claude is also sharing our mental models. Server versus client state management, indirections. On the client side, you can have commands or events, or both, that's fine. SignalStore, really powerful and extensible. I introduced some event plugins, and again, this kind of summarizes that the ultimate tool for any of the state needs, you can just use SignalStore. Or not, it's up to you. What I wanted to say also, thank you again. For longest time, Brendan and Tim been at the forefront of NgRx, helping and maintaining it all together. Marco, I want to say special thanks to Marco, who was basically the lead architect of the SignalStore overall. So what you see there, it's his tireless nights over many years. Because again, we're not getting paid for any of this stuff. Also another huge help to Rainer here, who joined as a core member of NgRx team late last year. Lots of work, and again, immeasurable help for the project, so thank you, Rainer. And that basically completes the entire team. With that, I promised the link for the front-end masters. I see even one laptop with a logo there. So you can use this. It has a little discount as well. You can take a look at the courses if you want to. They're actually switching to master.dev now, so they're in the middle of rebranding. But this still works if you want to take a look. And on that note, thank you. Thank you so much. Hopefully it was very useful.